endless, a blank check. Yes, sir.
Congress wrote their way out of the corner on that, though, with the War Powers Act. He can go to war for, 90 days before.
How long have we been in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, he's not the only one that's done it.
No, he isn't. And trust me, I'm saying this as a general rule. To me, if we're going to get back to the fundamentals of our Constitution, that includes adhering to the separation of powers as they were intended. Because I'm not an advocate, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat president, of giving more power to the executive branch. The checks and balances have got to work in order for the republic to succeed. Back here and then here. Yes, sir.
In our church, we're studying on Sunday nights American Heritage by David Barton. This so happens that last week was a role that blacks played in the Revolution. My question is, why don't black leaders teach the black people the truth of their heritage? Because they played a real instrumental role in the Revolution. Even a black man rode with Paul Revere.
That's right.
One direction, Paul Revere, and he goes right on down the line of outstanding statesmen that were black. The majority of black people never hear about it.
Well, that's true. But I will say, I think a lot of our young people don't know a whole lot about our history. And I think a lot of, first of all, I think a lot of that's deliberate. But to your specific question, one of the great series that I saw Glenn Beck do was the series on black founders. Even this very liberal website called The Root, which is aimed at the black community, actually gave him kudos. They hated doing it. They admitted it. But they gave him kudos for that particular series. The problem with that being taught, originally when Black History Week, it used to be a week before they made it into a month, the reason that was established was precisely for that reason, because there was a sense that a lot of schools were focusing on the inferiority of blacks as slaves and all of this, and as just working class people, but they wanted to show that there was heroism, there was great achievement there. Somewhere along the way, Black History Month got distorted into what I call a black pity party and a white guilt trip. I mean, if you think, I'll give you one example. A friend of mine said this past month that her daughter came back from a Black History Month session at her school and said, "Oh, Mommy, those poor African Americans, we treated them so bad." He said, "Yeah. And what happened after that? Where are we today? This isn't 1955. We're not sitting in the back of the bus anymore. Did they say anything about that? Did they say anything about the progress that's been made? Did they talk about the fact that one of the richest people in the world is Oprah?"
And she won't invest in schools in this country. She builds them in South Africa.
Yep. I mean, to me, it doesn't, the heroism doesn't jive with the victimhood narrative. And it doesn't, and remember, that combination of black pity and white guilt is what allows liberals and the black leaders that are aligned with them to perpetuate this story. I was arguing with someone about the whole topic of reparations. And when you get to the end of the book, you'll see when I talk about solutions, I talk about three things. I talk about adopting individualism, I talk about entrepreneurship, and I talk about forgiveness. Because if you're going to do reparations, number one, who gets to decide what the price is for those years of loss of liberty? If it's the victim, when's the statute of limitations run out? To me, reparations are just a vehicle for not only perpetuating this division, but it's going to breed more anger and resentment. Is that what we want? I mean, I think as Christians, we understand that there is no way for us to repay the sins of the past. God tells us there's no way that you can somehow repay me for what you did. You'll never get there. That is why we were offered forgiveness. Because forgiveness wipes the slate clean and allows us to start going forward in a new direction. So if we can't adopt forgiveness as a community, we're lost. So when you talk about the victimhood and all the other things that are there, they've got to stop. It's important to understand the past, but don't wallow in it. The past is past, it's done. This is a new day. And there are enough examples today that we could point to that say, you can do this. People have to start telling them you can do this. They have to start, George Bush had a great phrase, the soft bigotry of low expectations. Every single situation where you've seen inner city kids thrive in school is because somebody went in there and said, you can do this. There was a great story on ABC News, which I don't watch, by the way, but my wife does, so I happened to walk by and she said, sit down, you have to see this. And I listened. That's one thing I did learn as a husband. But it was actually a very good story. It was about a high school in Cincinnati, which was one of the worst in Cincinnati and one of the worst in the country. And this black principal came in with this hard-nosed attitude, you can do this. And he found teachers who believed in the students too. And they buckled down, and now this school is not only one of the best, 97% graduation rate compared to 18% just 6 years ago, and 80% of them are going to four-year colleges. Same kids, same environment, different expectations. I mean, the God-given capacity of humans to adapt is amazing, but we just need to tap into it. And I think that's a lesson that we can learn from stories like that.
There's one of those schools that is in the media every 2 or 3 years, Chicago being one of the early ones I remember decades ago, and the woman was running her own. I shift gears. We sat in on a seminar or presentation at Williamsburg a few years ago, and this was recreators telling us about how we got to where we are with the language that we have. And he said, understand that it started out life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. We came to this country so we could own dirt. The problem with the wording was property.
Right.
Slaves were considered property. And that word had to go, and this was from the southern states. So it became life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Your thoughts?
It's correct. They felt that if they talked about property, then you've introduced something into that entire concept of liberty that was inconsistent. They had to change it.
The next step became the 3/5 clause.
Right. People have to understand that if they read their history and they understand it, slavery was not an issue that they took casually. And I always hear people, I love to quote Thomas Jefferson. I think some of his words about liberty are some of the greatest words ever written. But they always want to point out he owned slaves. I have two responses to that. The first one is that if every man and woman and whoever lived is going to have their wisdom invalidated because of their sins, then nobody counts. Okay? And the second thing I tell them is that these men and women were conflicted. Some of them decided that they had economic reasons. George Washington, he didn't free his slaves until he died, and he left it in his will. That not only were they to be freed, but they were to be given property, and they were to be educated. So they understood at their deepest level that these were men and women. But they were dealing with the circumstances of their day. They struggled with it, and it was not universal, as some people would like to claim. Yes, sir.
This is a little off topic, but could you talk a little about the void of leadership we have in the Congress today? On both sides of the line?
Well, one of the things I always tell people is that their expectations for political parties should be lowered. Because parties are not about principles. Parties are about winning elections. And if you think about it, if you look at either the Republican or the Democratic Party, if they need to put a blue dog Democrat down there to run against a Republican to get that seat in Democrat hands, even though that person might be a thorn in their side, less so today than before, they're going to do it. If Republicans need to elect a Scott Brown to replace Ted Kennedy in that seat, they'll put up with it. So we have to understand that, and that's what we're experiencing right now with this whole issue about the budget, the continuing resolutions and all of that. The people that are there are using a calculus that the people out in the Tea Party movement and across America